So over 160 years ago, in 1841, Theodore Parker gave a very famous sermon at a Unitarian church called "The Transient and Permanent in Christianity." It wasn't the only turning point, but it was one of the evolutionary legs of our Unitarian faith that would evolve us out of, well, traditional Christian roots. In that sermon, Theodore wanted to get at something. What was the truth? What was that thing that is permanent, that cannot be moved, and what is fading? He says, when true religion is always the same thing in each and every century, in every land, in each person that feels it, the Christianity of the pulpit, the Christianity of the people, has never been the same. It asked a question of its time: what is transitioning about religion, and what is permanent about faith? Well, over 160 years later, in the face of American religious decline, our Unitarian Universalist faith asks a similar question. What are our faith's universal truths? What is at the core of our beliefs and values? What is at the heart of what we do? And what is changing? What is evolving? For those who may be visitors for the first time or new to Unitarian Universalism, you came to us at an interesting point in time, a point where across our denomination, our congregations, we are revising the ways we talk about ourselves. We're adopting new language, figuring out if that works. Again, the principles from 1985, they're not going anywhere. We can use them anytime we want. Most likely, I will probably use them for the rest of my life in some way or other because I grew up with them. But what I love about this denomination and faith is that in our DNA, literally in our bylaws, is a requirement to revise those values every 25 years. We are committed to change and evolve. For two reasons. One, because we don't want to be stagnant. We want to grow and evolve and change based on the times. But two, like I said in that old theological talk, the concept that revelation is not sealed. We're not bound to one truth that will last 250 years forever. We are bound to new scientific discoveries, new ways of thinking about human philosophy, new questions about morality. We want to evolve and transform and change. And amidst that change, there are some things that will never change. There is a strong, permanent foundation, which no iteration of our Unitarian Universalist faith can escape. And that is love. Sometimes I hate talking about this because when I imagine people thinking about me talking about love, like, you should put some sunglasses and a peace sign. Like, I can understand that some people think that it's fluffy or vague, and I get that. But for our Unitarian Universalist faith, this is actually a theological foundation. It's in our philosophy and theology of our past, right? And for me, there are reasons why I'm excited that we're naming love is at the center of our faith, for three distinct reasons. So let me nerd out a little bit with you all. First, if you've met me, at least when I was in seminary and academia, I have a vested interest in what I call our intertheological diversity. What I mean by that is our Unitarian Universalist heritage being diverse in its theology. We have humanists and atheists just as we have theists and Christians. It's not a contradiction. Get used to it. And what I love about love and the word love is that it's a perfect word to bridge that gap, right? For those of us who are theists or come from our Christian roots, love is understood as God. There is no God if it's not a God of love. There is no understanding of love if you believe in God that is not permeated by God, right? Love is an understanding of a force, possibly supernatural or possibly natural, that moves us towards justice, that grounds our being and claims our worth. But what if you don't believe in God? Well, for the humanists and atheists among us, love is the ultimate and highest form of moral value. It is a sense and a call for who you want to become and who you are calling yourself towards. This is found everywhere, whether in existential philosophy and humanist writings or even in atheistic talks. If I go back to the words of the 1933 Humanist Manifesto, it says, "Nothing human is alien to the religious. The distinction between the sacred and the secular can no longer be maintained." if that is true, then our human experiences of connection, whether biologically speaking or whether talking about morals and how we live with each other, our relationships, it's sacred. It's a foundation from which humanists, atheists, and agnostics can move from. So that's the first reason. I love love at the center because it bridges that gap. Secondly, because it really has been at the iteration of every Unitarian Universalist theology. If I go all the way back to our Universalist roots, literally, our Universalist roots are a denomination that said, what is this hell thing? This doesn't make any sense. Why, if there was a God, would God want to punish people for all time in guilt and fire and brimstone? No, it doesn't make any sense. Everyone deserves to be in heaven. Everyone deserves to be loved and saved. From those roots, God is love. That's where we get the God is love theology, which would then evolve through Clarence Skinner in the early 1900s to the social gospel movement, which talked about living in the world with social justice, understanding that the mission of faith is to change the world here on earth, or as our Universalists would say, loving the hell out of the world. You might see that on our t-shirts for the fellowship here. But also for our transcendentalists who understood that every person has a direct relationship with spirituality. That's in our past, and that has to do with a human experience called love. Or like I said, our humanists who literally lifted up that there's no separation with the secular and sacred, that love is one of the virtues of what it means to be human. All of these different places in our past, all these different incarnations of who we have been, have centered in some way or another love. And finally, why I love so much that we're centered on love is because it gets to the point of what we're doing. We're not here to build a creed to say, here's a statement of faith, sign your name, do you agree or not? That's not how Unitarian Universalists work. How we work is not so much what our creed is, what exactly you believe in, but how are you living your faith? How are we doing this together? Love is not a statement or a philosophy you ascribe to. Love is a doing, it's a being. It is how we relate to other human beings. It is how we live our lives. Love is an action just as much as it is an existence. That is the point. The point isn't, can I give you the one and only truth for all time that you can sign a creed here? The point is, we're still figuring it out. We're doing it together with love. For me, I look at these values that are written all over our principles, the affirmation of spiritual growth and acceptance, a work and call towards justice and equity, a call of transformation, of generosity, and all of them are permeated through and through with how we figure out to be compassionate. How we are faithful people living in the world depends on how we love. There is nothing without love. Over 160 years after Theodore Parker's Transient and Permanent, our denomination is facing a very different time. We live in a moment of widespread religious decline, where people in our society are wondering if religion, spirituality, or faith is even relevant anymore. I might be biased because this is literally my profession. But I believe it's not only relevant, but incredibly necessary. We live in times of what I call old gods, the gods of capitalism, the gods of power, of money, of patriarchy and supremacy are raging high and wide across our society. They are duking it out for the end. Those who are in power are clinging on to stay in power because they are scared of what might come next. Around our world, we hear cries of people desperately trying to figure out how to survive, whether to get out of the framework of 60 to 80-hour work weeks, whether to find a way to live more sustainably in a world devastated by climate change, or whether witnessing in terror ongoing and relentless death of war, even when we cry out for justice, both for the release of hostages and for a ceasefire to stop killing Gazans. It is a hard world to live in right now. And we also see widespread misinformation, people turning to isolation, to fear, and possibly even fascism, instead of community and connection. I fear for a world that is stuck in a binary thinking of us versus them, that has no way of testing their perspectives or prejudices, that has no way of thinking outside of their one almost indestructible lane. I am scared of a world that's evolving to dig its heels in, trying to deny climate change or the failing of economic systems. I am scared of a world without the resiliency of the human spirit. And I know another way is possible, because I see it here. I see it when people ask themselves, are we living with love? Is this compassionate? Is what I believe about myself and my world compassionate? Is how I vote, how I listen, how I eat, how I go to work, is it compassionate? Am I doing it with love? It is clear to me that the world doesn't need any religious institution stuck in the past. We need spiritual communities that are ready to evolve and change. But it's also clear to me that people don't need another pat answer, another certainty, another creed. All the systems that we used to rely on are collapsing around us. Instead, we need a movement. We need people centered in compassion, bridging across difference, cultivating real commitment and willingness to change, both themselves and others, so the world may be transformed by love. For there's nothing that can be done without love. No human being can function in this world without it, whether talking literally of babies as they mature in the first month of their life, or when it comes to all the interdependencies we rely on, from the technology we foster to the food we eat, the shelter we have. There is nothing we don't do, not relied on others. Such utter dependence on all of us. We need community. And I feel so very lucky and grateful. For some odd reason, I was given the privilege and the honor to be in a community like this, to live a life of faith like this, to be connected with people who don't agree on the same things I do, but who center in love and compassion, who know what it is to love out loud, whether it's with our Black Lives Matter sign or pride flag, or whether it's with the ways we help the food pantry, or the ways we show up when someone is sick. It is a privilege to practice being human with you. And I hope, whoever you are, however you found us, you find a way to find the people in your life that call you into being more loving people. I hope you find the way to cultivate your spirit, to find community and connection, because, to be honest, this world so desperately needs you. It needs people dedicated to love and compassion. It needs people inspired and relentless, people who are not afraid to change themselves and others to build a world founded on love. Wherever you are, I hope in some way you join us. Discover the world as it could be: liberated, transformative, merciful, generous, pluralistic, interdependent, and mostly filled with love. For there is nothing without love.